Hello, welcome to this Ned Davis research video where we will help you see the signals. My name is Brian Sanborn, NDR's Global Head of Investment Solutions. In this video, we will be speaking with NDR's Chief Economist, Alejandra Grindal. In a recent research note, Alejandra discussed the unexpected demographic upside from the pandemic. Alejandra, the pandemic had negative near-term labor force participation, life expectancy, birth rates, and migration. But what are you seeing as the lasting consequence from the pandemic?
Oh, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. So there's a lot of lasting consequences, but one that I think sort of stands out is it appears to be the way we work. So if you look at major economies all around the world, flexible work weeks and days work from home have actually become a bit of a norm. So on average, employees globally work almost one day at home per week. So this is paid work. It is sort of different depending on the country. So the number is greater in Canada, in the UK, and in the US, and relatively lower in Asia and France. But most economies at least have some sort of work from home. While many debate the merits of flexible work, we could probably have a whole discussion about that. There are some burgeoning signs that it could be contributing to long-term demographic change, which could actually have positive implications from years to come.
So, which demographic cohort would be most impacted by the shift in the way we work?
That's a great question. And we've noticed some sort of interesting developments all over the world. I think it has to do with the combination of this flexible work that I mentioned and the types of jobs in demand. We've seen female participation rates soar all over the world. So if you actually look at the labor force participation rate among females ages 25 to 54, so this would typically be the age cohort where you have, say, children living at home with you. It is now decisively higher compared to pre-pandemic levels among all major economies. So there aren't even exceptions, all major economies. And this is pretty important because the world's female population in general has the potential to play an outsized role in the global economy and productivity and even stock market trends over time. By comparison, if you look at the labor force participation rate of males of that 25 to 54 age group, growth has actually been much lower. And in some cases, like the UK as well as Japan, participation rate of males in that age group is still below pre-pandemic levels.
So, would you expect the increased labor force participation rates for females ages 25 to 54 to result in lower birth rates?
Yeah, that's often a question we receive because you think, well, if you're working, you're going to have fewer children. But actually, the opposite is true. It seems counterintuitive, but historically, higher female participation is actually associated with elevated birth rates when you look at this among developed economies. So to give you an example, Greece and Italy have some of the lowest female participation rates, but they also tend to have one of the lowest fertility rates. On the other hand, Sweden, Norway, Australia, and even the UK are just the opposite, where they have relatively higher participation rates and higher birth rates. And the main reason for this is you have two incomes now, right? So increased income just makes it more affordable to have a greater number of children. You tend to see higher female participation if there are measures that make it easier for mothers to work. So you'll notice this in countries that have, say, subsidized or, say, adequate and cost-effective childcare. So what's rather interesting is although this may have been unintentional, flexible work appears to have helped. We're already seeing some initial research from the NBER indicating that birth rates could be picking up, at least in the United States. Now, the final data can often take some time nationally and is subject to revision. So, we're basing this on this study, but it is a positive development. And so what they found was that the pandemic resulted in a baby bump among US-born mothers in California, and it appears to have extended through at least February 2023, so into this year. The largest increase, incidentally, was among women under the age of 25. And this is somewhat significant because if you start your family earlier, it typically means that you'll ultimately have more children, and that in and itself increases the birth rate. Among those older than the age of 25, the baby bump was the greatest among families with women who have college educations ages 30 to 34. And again, one would assume that would be the age group and the demographic that would be more susceptible to allowing these work from home measures.
Oh, very interesting. So for our listeners, I'm sure ultimately what they want to know is why these demographic developments matter for both the global economy as well as the stock market.
Yeah, we've been writing about this for so many years, and it's super important. And I do want to note that very few things are difficult to forecast in the very long term. So looking 5, 10, 20 years out. But demographics, a lot of these projections we see are usually quite accurate. So keeping that in mind, if we look at potential real GDP growth in the long term, so this is your sustainable expansion, it's determined by your inputs. And roughly speaking, this is the growth in a country's labor force plus how well it's utilized, which is productivity. So a country's labor force is not only determined by the size of its working age population, but it's also sort of determined by the labor force participation rate. So a lot of these trends we're seeing in the female cohort or the female, gender, it's important to see that rise because that literally increases the number of workers. Now, for most of the developed world, working age population trends were already projected to decline just due to this prolonged period of below replacement fertility rates. Labor force participation is driven by both structural and cyclical factors, but as I just talked about, the pandemic may have helped change some of these factors for the better. And we're able to associate this with long-run stock market returns. We've seen a positive relationship between labor force growth and stock market returns, especially labor force growth among a more maturing labor force population. And many of the reasons essentially relate to why working age population contributes to faster economic and productivity growth.
Alejandra, thank you for your insights. NDR clients can read Alejandra's research notes in her weekly Global Economic Focus publication. Alejandra has produced in-depth insights on global demographics for more than a decade. NDR clients can access this information and this work through NDR's website and choosing the demographics category under the tab under the main banner. For more information on Ned Davis research, please visit the following websites regarding our subscriptions, our model portfolios, and the ETFs and products that use our models. Thank you for joining us as we help you see the signals. So long.